If you look back at perception, it is a difficult thing because it's not always within the control, within your own control. You're very dependent on what people write about you and what is, just what you see in the international media. At the same time, what we always understand is that companies who work and live in Moscow, their experience are very valid. And I think that's what we're going to address in the next topic that will be presented by Katja, is a SWOT analysis of companies, if I'm well informed, who are active in the Russian market for a longer period of time. And I think these people have the real experience, to base their opinions on. Can you please share the findings of this research? Oh, it's the clicker. Second.
Thank you, Mark. We have conducted SWOT analysis of Moscow as an international financial center, and we have done that in accordance with two different methods. We have analyzed 14 global financial centers, and we conducted benchmarking. So we compared them to Moscow, and we have also validated our opinions received as a result of this research through 30 interviews with representatives of the financial sector. And we tried to choose those who have worked in different financial centers of the world so that they could compare our data and help us in setting the priorities within our research results. So here on the slide you can see this group of financial international centers used by us as reference. We've taken them from different categories, from different geographical regions, and that helped us to make this group, this reference group, is a very representative one. I believe it is also a very interesting one. We see here competitors of Moscow in the developing markets. So if we talk about those factors that we have analyzed, we tried to group them according to analytical research, according to IFC topics. So the segments you can see here, there are 7 of them: business climate, development of financial markets, economic impact, human resources, life quality, infrastructure. So mostly the results are in complete accordance with the ratings of ZYET, or Financial Centers Development Index. It is very interesting that our respondents believe that business climate factor is considered by them to be the most important one among the other factors. The other major indices do not consider this factor to be the priority one. So that is why we believe that if business climate is good one, it is perceived as something okay, something neutral. If it is bad, it is considered to be a more important factor, and it impedes development of a region or a city as a financial center. So that is why we decided that business climate is perhaps one of the factors that can help us implement the potential, economic potential of Moscow as an IFC. What were the other results? According to objective results, objective evaluations of Moscow as IFC, they are higher than objective ones. You can see them in the left column. Moscow, within the major indices, they are quite low. If you look to the right of the slide, this is data, hard data on economic reports, on financial reports. You can see that Moscow is not at such a bad position, according to such factors as, for example, a number of headquarters of major global companies, a number of greenfield projects. Such factor of a number of employment in financial and business services is very high for Moscow, much higher than for its competitors. Thus, we arrive at the conclusion that for Moscow to be promoted as an international financial center, it is very important to achieve right positioning strategy. Um, I would like to start with business climate factor. As we can see, there is a number of positive characteristics here. This is low level of taxation for private people. This is also state initiatives that are right now implemented within the sphere of improving business climate. Together with our respondents, we have also come up with a number of negative factors. Insufficient level of judicial system development. So for some people, unfortunately, this is very negative when they work in the financial market. Instability of legislative basis and not quite good administration, some other factors as well. At the same time, our respondents have stated some opportunities, such as implementation of managerial institutions, which could help in solving certain daily issues, especially if we talk about managing investment expectations. This is formulation of Moscow position and strategy as a developing IFC. This is also mitigation of the visa status. Then also we have talked about this, that people who visited Moscow, they actually changed their opinion about Moscow, and it's easier for them to attract human resources, including young human resources, to Moscow. So their perception of Moscow changes quite dramatically after visiting the city. So the next factor, development of financial markets in Moscow. Well, unfortunately, here we have more negative factors, more shortfalls. But on the whole, I can say that financial market of the Russian Federation is considered to be one of the largest in the Central and Eastern Europe. But perhaps the most important drawback here is insufficient development of financial instruments. Then also their accumulated assets, they do not surpass the GDP of the country, while in the developed countries it is 3 times higher. According to analysts, about 75% of resources attracted from the global market were attracted due to targeted holdings created in foreign jurisdictions. Then also quite low level of financial literacy. A very low number of population can be considered to be financial investors, and very low level of development of a stock platform. Then also no guarantees for minority shareholders, but still there are quite a lot of opportunities here. I'm not going to elaborate on them in great detail, because I think they have to be developed together with the government of the country and of the city. If we talk about the level of economic development, as I have said, Moscow has great potential here, because Moscow on the whole shows great results according to the level of its economic development. So this is post-industrial economics. It is on the 6th place according to the gross added value for the domestic gross product. So here we talk, we are among 15 largest cities in the world according to this factor. A low diversification, dependency on resources are drawbacks. A low level of innovative development. In our rating for innovative development, Moscow is only on the 102 position, and we have almost all the reference cities ahead of Moscow. I don't want to dwell on the human resource factor. Traditionally, we are occupying quite high positions here, and in this reference group, we again were quite in a beneficial position, but we still have growth potential here by introducing more expanded foreign language basis education, then enhancing qualification of students who would like to work in global financial markets, etc. Well, talking about infrastructure of Moscow, Moscow is a huge transport hub. The road length is quite considerable, but still quite low level of service, transport services. And here, we also can talk about certain potential. From the point of view, Moscow right now occupies one of the first places according to the territory of its forests, but people say that unfortunately the urban planning in Moscow is quite bad. Well, if you talk about safety in Moscow, most of the people consider it to be quite on a high level, but in certain ratings, Moscow occupies low positions, mostly because of the lack of information. And I believe if we can service properly foreigners coming to the city, we can increase perception of this factor as well. And the last factor is the life quality in Moscow. The city is perceived as a dynamic, very interesting and fascinating city to live. Together with its cultural traditions, and it is considered to be interesting for foreigners as well. Lots of international events are being held here. On the other hand, still we have certain possibilities. Well, unfortunately, one of the negative factors is very high cost of living in Moscow. Some respondents say that if you don't have large resources, for you, life quality will be decreasing very rapidly. And then there is no infrastructure for foreigners. Mostly here we talk about education and health infrastructure. So on the whole, our research helped us to formulate a number of certain points, what should be done so that Moscow would become an international financial center. So talking about benefits, human resources and natural resources are perhaps the best benefits. And talking about human resources, I believe we have to make global community aware of the fact that Moscow is an attractiveness site for people from the post-Soviet countries. Moscow is a city where we have lots of measures being taken to make it perceived as a city with dynamic opportunities that could be a cosmopolitan city, very interesting and fascinating for those who can come to live here. So those are in general the results of our study.
It's interesting to see that on the one hand, just people form their opinions on what they read and see, and even having not been in Moscow or having done business here. On the other hand, Katja, you show very clearly, what the experience is of the people who live and work here. You mentioned, and I was triggered, you said we also see quite a few opportunities here, but we first have to discuss them with Moscow government. But we respected you very discreet. But could you give an idea about what opportunities you see and what, in your view, is one of the biggest opportunities for Moscow to benefit from?
Going back to the business climate, can I say that our respondents claimed on numerous occasions that even slightest changes in a number of aspects of business climate, just very modest improvements, will mean a breakthrough on the part of Moscow towards establishing IFC. And I think for the government, it's very important to identify those quick win points and to structure the communication in the right way. And also, can I invite my colleague, Mr. Nicholson, our strategy director.
One of the questions we've been asked is it realistic for Moscow to be an international financial center? And I think, my conclusion, the team's conclusion, is that it is very realistic, that probably one of the medium-term goals should be to establish Moscow firmly as the preferred market for companies to raise money from not only Russia, but the CIS more broadly, particularly, of course, Ukraine and Kazakhstan, and in that Moscow's biggest competitor is London, but making some progress in the competitiveness on issues like the business climate, the financial infrastructure, et cetera. There are a lot of things. I think it's very important to emphasize, and one of the things we say to all our clients, I know our colleagues at the other firms say, is how much progress has been made in Russia and how it is actually a very attractive place to do business. And companies that are here, as our research shows, know that it's a very attractive place to do business. In fact, some of them want to keep it a secret and don't talk about it so much at home. And it's an attractive place to do business because Russia, to its credit, has done some quite pioneering things. Unlike Brazil, India, and China, companies can move money in and out of Russia freely. Those countries all have currency controls, capital controls, et cetera. So it's a very attractive place to do business. And I'll just end on one story. 20 years ago, when I was a young partner in another firm, I ran a project for the city of New York and the New York City Chamber of Commerce because they were very concerned that they were losing a lot of financial service jobs, particularly to New Jersey, to surrounding states that had lower taxes, lower costs, and also to the southern United States. The city took a number of measures, including some tax measures, including some things about the business climate in the city, including improving things like construction permits, including helping get the unions to cooperate when telephone lines had to be installed and things like that, because New York City's unions were very difficult. And the city took a major role in pushing forward, and everybody knows the story 20 years later is New York is still a major financial center for the world, and it's still the leading financial center in the United States. In fact, it's probably extended its lead over cities like Chicago and Los Angeles and Atlanta, when at that time it was looking at like it might lose it. So I think one of the things that's really changed in the last 2 years, and I would congratulate the city on in this forum, is that there's a very positive attitude in the city trying to help foreign and local investors get the most out of this market. And I think we as a group and we as a firm are quite convinced that there will be a lot of progress over the next 2 years because of that drive and force from the city.